all of us. But at this difficult moment, I do want to express congratulations on all that you've accomplished so far, and congratulations on getting to this point in your college decision process. Now, typically in April, we have opportunities for you to come on campus and to visit classes, to meet faculty and students, to really get a flavor of what the Kenyon academic and educational experience is about. Because really, the direct connections with faculty and students are at the core of what happens here on campus. But since that's not possible, it's really my pleasure to bring to you a group of faculty to talk about their experience in the classroom and a bit about what the Kenyon education is about from their perspective. Now, this is a great opportunity for you to also get to know some of your potential classmates. So please feel free to introduce yourself into the comment line and use that as a way to chat with each other, as well as a way to pose questions that you may have for any of our faculty panelists. This is the first event that we'll be having to introduce faculty to all of you. We know that the schedule, both the schedule here on campus and all of our schedules are quite full, and so we recognize that this event is landing on the first night of Passover, but we do want to make sure that all folks have the opportunity to participate and learn about Kenyon. So there will be other events that come up over the course of the coming days and weeks. So in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started, and it's my pleasure to introduce our faculty panel. So I will start with introducing Professor John Taswell, Professor Judy Holdner, Professor of Mathematics, Professor Iris Ukungren, Professor of Creative Writing, Professor Jackie McAllister, Assistant Professor of Political Science, and Professor Drew Kirchhoff, Professor of Biology. As I mentioned before, there's a chance for you to come up with questions and enter them into the comment space. But to get things started, I thought I would all of the faculty to just comment a bit on your perspective on the dynamic between faculty and students at Kenyon, both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. And Jackie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think if there's a easy way of summarizing it, is it's actually a phrase that's in our mission, which is partners in inquiry. And I think this captures it really well in the sense, on the one hand, you have faculty that bring a broad range of expertise and passion for learning and teaching to the classroom. And they're matched and met by students who bring an equal level of curiosity and love of learning. And when those two things come together in the classroom, it leads to a space in which people can take risks and really explore and learn things in an incredible way. And that learning isn't just within the classroom, but it takes place outside the classroom. So for example, a number of faculty work with students on their own research or on students' own research opportunities. My department takes students on trips to Washington, D.C. There's wonderful study abroad programs all over the world. We spend a lot of time in office hours at Kenyon, really talking and getting to know our students. And that learning doesn't just happen at Kenyon in the classroom and outside of the classroom, but well beyond your 4 years at Kenyon. So I've been in regular contact with students who actually graduated 6 years ago, and I still know them and very much up to date with everything that's going on with them and helping them as they figure out the steps for grad school. So that's been my experience. And congratulations.
Thank you, Jackie. Drew. Drew, if you could introduce yourself and talk about your view on the faculty-student dynamic at Kenyon.
Yeah, so I'm Drew Kirchhoff. I'm a professor of biology here at Kenyon. I'm also the director of student research programs. So I help to manage all of our summer research programs that are built around collaborative research between faculty and students. Like Jackie said, the thing that I think really makes Kenyon a very special community is that we're all here for common purposes. Kenyon is rather isolated in this beautiful bucolic setting that unfortunately you guys can't all visit this April. But part of what grows out of this place that we are is a small community of common interest where we're all here, uh, uh, the faculty because we want to teach, because we want to be with students who are excited to learn, and the students are here because they want to be in that same environment, sharing knowledge and learning. And so, we're not here for the nightlife. We're not here for the parties. We're not here for the museums, though we have a wonderful gallery. We're not here for all of the things that many of you have where you already live. We're here because of Kenyon. And as a scientist, the other thing that strikes me about the student-faculty experience is the close connection between our teaching and scholarship that we have here at Kenyon. So, we don't have laboratories full of postdoctoral researchers and staff scientists and research technicians and graduate students at various levels. We have our students to work with. And that's not a drawback. That's a feature for us. We want to work with young scientists who are just starting to develop their own interest in the field and are exploring across lots of different disciplines. And it's very exciting because rather than being the specialist who just does one thing well, like many of our colleagues are at larger research universities, we get to be generalists. We get to know our fields broadly because we have to introduce students to those disciplines in the broadest possible terms so that they can find their own interests. And in turn, that working together with students, at least from my own experience, has really helped me to discover whole new projects, to ask questions that I wouldn't have asked if I hadn't had students standing next to me asking questions of their own. And so I think that the intensity of the relationship that we have between faculty and students is something that is, for me, having been here for about 15 years, is what makes the experience really, really special. And I look forward to getting to know those of you who choose to come to Kenyon as well.
Thank you, Drew. And so, Ira, say a bit about what you're teaching this semester and how you found the student dynamic here at Kenyon.
So I'm Iris Sukrangrang, and this semester I'm teaching a senior seminar in creative writing. So the seniors who are graduating with an English major with an emphasis in creative writing have to take that course. I'm also teaching an advanced creative writing seminar on creative nonfiction. I'm a newbie, so this is going to be my first full academic year at Kenyon, and I have been astounded by the interactions I've had with students. And I think one of the things that I can talk about a little bit is I think every professor on this panel right now are wonderful teachers because they've had wonderful teachers, right? In many ways, we're trying to model and give back the way our professors had what they have given us. And so when I think of the Kenyon student, and when I think of, I think the best way to describe it is this way. A lot of my friends who aren't teaching at Kenyon look forward to the summer so that they can do their work, right? To do their creative writing. For me, when the summer comes and I don't have to teach, I usually play with my PlayStation 4 or I binge watch a lot of Korean dramas. Most of my writing, I would say most of my writing happens during the school year. And the reason it happens during the school year is because I feed off of the energy from the students, right? We're talking about writing constantly. We're analyzing poetry, essays, short stories. We're looking at story structure, right? There's not a moment where I myself, as a teacher, where I'm not being challenged in a way by the students, right? And so I feed off that energy. And to me, that is, I think, an indication of what that student faculty dynamic is, right? It's a synergistic kind of relationship.
So, John, about what you're teaching this semester and your take on faculty, student.
Well, my name's Jonathan Taswell, and I'm a professor of drama.
Oh, John, could you unmute? Oh, I hear you now, so I think you're okay. Sure. Okay. So maybe let's jump over to Judy. So you
Okay,
your take
sure.
on the student faculty dynamic.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Judy Holdner. I teach in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. I'm also serving as the college's faculty athletic rep. So I work with athletes who might want advice in navigating the life as an athlete. Typically, I teach the calculus sequence, number theory, algebra, introduction to proofwriting. But this year I happen to be on sabbatical, so I feel kind of guilty about this because my colleagues are putting forth what I see as Herculean efforts to pull all of their teaching online. And at Kenyon, this is not what we do. This is not our forte. What we're best at is working one-on-one with students. But these are professionals, my colleagues. They're stepping up and they're doing amazing things. I've actually requested to observe their teaching, and they think I'm crazy. But I want to see how they're doing this. And I'm really impressed at how much time and effort and love and passion has gone into their course prep. I like about Kenyon is the classes are really small. So what that means is you really get to know the students get to know you, and the students get to know each other. In class, it tends to be hands-on, at least for me. I have students working in groups sometimes students at the board, but we're working on really hard material, and we work on it together. So it's a lot of fun. And then I like that the work extends outside of the classroom and into office hours, as my colleagues have already mentioned. So another phrase we like to say at Kenyon is that learning is learning in the company of friends. And I would echo that it's very rigorous, but not competitive. We're all really supportive.
Thanks, Judy. So I'm wondering if you all could tell us a little bit about, in general, what are Kenyon students like? I know this is something that we hear as questions often, and it's something that folks won't be able to directly in the same way as they usually do. So let's start with, you mentioned here. What have your impressions been of Kenyon students over the course of your first academic year?
My experience thus far is to talk about the first class I taught at Kenyon College. So I taught a class called English 103, which many of you might be taking next semester when you come. And the topic of the course was called Writing the Body, right? And so we're evaluating literature, poetry, nonfiction, fiction that deals with the body. And to me, the body is everything. The body encompasses everything we do. And because we're talking about the body, we're also talking about very sensitive issues. And what I was astounded by, right, was that this class that I had that were primarily incoming students, I mean, were freshmen, we're talking at the level and the sensitivity and with the knowledge of humility and dialoguing. And this is the thing that I was really quite impressed with. Um, One of the things that I'm always astounded by is that Kenyan students know how to hold a conversation. Kenyan students know how to ask questions, aren't afraid to ask questions. Kenyan students are eager to talk about issues like race and gender, right? And really get into the thick of it, instead of trying to avoid, right? I think this is something that was in that class in particular, in that 103 class, was mind blowing. And I kept saying this to a lot of my colleagues. It was one of the best classes that I've ever taught in my career as a teacher. And I've been teaching 20 years. I've taught graduate students. That class was just amazing. And it seems to all the classes I've had the students have that same kind of rigor, that same type of thirst, right? They want to learn. They want to be here. And that, again, like what I said before, that just feeds me as an instructor, right? To go in the class every day and feel like we are working together on something.
Yeah. Thank you, Ira. Your take on, what's your impression of Kenyon? Oh, sorry, Jackie. So what are Kenyon students like?
Yeah, I would echo some of what Ira just said. I think stood out the most for me teaching it. I taught at Northwest College before coming to Kenyon. And I think the thing that makes the Kenyon students unique is they're very kind and supportive of each other and the professor. And I think in that kind of setting, you can explore material at a level that you might be able to in other settings where students are scared about sounding stupid or saying the wrong thing or whatever. So students and faculty can really dive into issues and explore them and go in some incredible directions. And it's an absolutely rigorous, stimulating, exceptional context. The other thing I would echo about Kenyon students is that it is a small college in a rural town, or rural area. But our students are extraordinary and really go beyond Kenyon and the wider world and the local community and so forth to do some really exceptional things. So I've had students working with refugees in Lampedusa. I've had students working with NGOs, humanitarian relief NGOs in Jordan. I've had students traveling throughout South and Central America working with different educational initiatives for students with disabilities in those countries. And I'm just perpetually impressed by the level of humility, intellect, and exceptionalism that I see in the student.
Thank you, Jackie. So Drew, what are Kenyon students like?
Oh, I think Kenyan students are a bunch of nerds, and I mean that in the most positive and loving sense. Everyone who's here is, they really care passionately about something, and it doesn't have to be necessarily my statistics class. But what I always like is that even in a statistics class, I often, through an answer to a problem or an exercise or an analysis that they decide to pursue, I get to learn a little something about just an interest of the students. And so, for example, in my introductory biology class last year, one of the students, so I teach energy and living systems, which is our first course in biology, and it's sort of biochemistry, physiology, and ecology. And we were learning about metabolic pathways, and we learned about fermentation. And after, which, in case you don't know, is very important to our food system. So not only bread and beer, the stuff of life, but also, kimchi and all sorts of wonderful things are all made through fermentation. And the student came up to me after class, a first year from last year, and told me that she and her friends were starting a student organization called Fermentation Friends. And it's a student organization focused on bread making, potentially when they become old enough, beer making, but also making kimchi, kombucha, and all sorts of other foodstuffs that are reliant on fermentation. And so that's just an example that I give that isn't really about necessarily being exceptional out there in the world, but it's and it turns out I ended up being the faculty advisor for the Fermentation Friends, which is a real coup on my part. You know, I'm sure I will take this somewhere professionally. So, I think that's just an example that illustrates a little bit about Kenyon students. I think there's just an energy that they bring to whatever interests them, and that's something I really appreciate about them.
No, thank you, Drew. And I have to say, I had a flyer for the Fermentation Friends group that was slid under the door of the president's house at on
All
campus.
right, good.
So I was delighted to see the student initiative. So Judy, can you say a little bit about what Kenyon students are like?
Well, they definitely are nerds. And I guess I would describe it as intellectually curious. You know, I'll give you an example. I gave a talk a couple weeks ago about some work I did on my sabbatical last semester. I spent it at Brown University at the Institute of Computational and Experimental Research in Mathematics. So I gave a talk about this work, and I mentioned this paper at the end and said I wanted to read it. And if anybody in the audience wanted to join me for just a brief reading group, we would maybe meet a few times once a week. You know, let me know. And at the end of the talk, probably 10 students came up and they all wanted to do this. And so we met and read this paper. This has nothing to do with coursework. I'm not even scheduled to teach this semester, but they were all in and they had worked through the material and we talked about it. It was really fun. So this is a neat thing that you can do, that, you know, you just sort of throw out this idea. Is anybody interested? And people will jump on it because there's a lot of interest. You know, and some people maybe aren't interested in statistics, right? But some people are, and they'll just jump on it. And you know, whoever you are, there's going to be your tribe here, right? Who you're going to be able to find nerds with similar interests, because there's a lot of diversity as well in terms of interests of the various students.
Yep. Thanks, Judy. And John, can you say a bit about what you think Kenyon students are like?
Sure. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me earlier. I hope you can now. I think that Kenyon students are nerds too, but I also find them to be incredibly creative and interesting and artistic. One of the favorite things that I do with students, aside from the creative stuff that I do in film and drama with students all of the time, is that I get to make a lot of music with students. Outside of the classroom. I sing in the local church choir, and then I have a lot of students who are in that choir with me who are not students of mine in class. And then I also have a band that I'm in with a couple of other Kenyon faculty people, and we always have students who are a part of that band. And so I see students in ways that are outside of the classroom being really interesting and creative, having all kinds of talents and things that they may not actually exhibit in the classroom, but they do behind the scenes.
Thank you. And so we have a question from one of the students in the audience. And so this is from Olivia. And Olivia wants to know, what's the curriculum like for a first-year student? So I wondered maybe if I'll go around, if each of you could say a bit about your general view of the curriculum of a first-year student, but maybe what some specific examples of a class that you've taught for first years and how that class works. And maybe Jackie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm in the Department of Political Science. I forgot to say that at the beginning. But one thing that our department does that's very, very special and unique to our department is we teach this class called Quest for Justice. And I've actually had the opportunity of teaching that class this semester. And it's the most fascinating course because it pulls together all these core political theoretical works about questions about what is justice? What does it mean to live a good life? How do you bring in all sorts of different groups into a political society and ensure that they can fulfill their purpose and so forth. So throughout the course of the year, you come together with a small group of first-year students and you really work on these wonderful texts together and just learn so much. So if you take that class to another option, you can do your first year in political sciences. You can take international relations, and that class focuses less on kind of the normative, subjective questions, and more so on these questions of explaining and understanding how world politics actually works. So, for example, one puzzle we'd explore would be what and responding. Those are classes in my department. The other thing I personally encourage my to do is to take a broad range of courses. And I think one of the absolute best things about a liberal arts college and interdisciplinary learning in general is you can be taking classes in biology and mathematics and a class in political science, and you will find a million connections between those courses, and in turn kind of open your mind about different ways of looking at puzzles and understanding and explaining our world. So it's an absolutely fascinating thing to see a first-year student come in committed to like pre-med, and then we steal them to political science, and they go on to to the State Department. So, but there's lots of really wonderful opportunities for interdisciplinary learning and great opportunities in political science for people to really kind of explore and just do the practical questions, but kind of the deeper questions about what does it mean to have a better world and how do we get there.
So Drew, how about you? Your view on the first-year curriculum?
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak a little generally first. So, all of us at Kenyon, all of the faculty members, each of us, each fall is assigned 4 or 5 first-year advisees. And so if you choose to come to Kenyon, you'll get an email sometime during the summer telling you who your faculty advisor is. And then shortly after that, you'll hear from your faculty advisor, and we start that conversation right away. And that's a really great time to sort of get to know the new students who are coming in, and so we start to explore some of your interests. And what I really recommend for my first-year advisees is a sort of highly varied curriculum of really trying to explore a number of different fields. If you have an interest, take classes that advance that interest, but then also find a class that you don't know what it is. If your high school didn't have a sociology class and one of them looks interesting, take that sociology class, or see if you can get into the first painting studio class, light and color, right? And so I think what Jackie said is really true. Finding these connections across disciplines and across different ways of using your mind and different ways of engaging in the world intellectually, creatively, critically, really sort of sets up a really positive experience. You do enough about what you're interested in to keep your doors open, but also then explore around to find the things that you didn't even know were there, and that will become something central in your life, or even just a side interest. In terms of the introductory material, introductory coursework in my department, biology starts with a 2-course lecture series, Energy in Living Systems and Information in Living Systems for the first 2 semesters. And then we also have a year-long laboratory class. And one of the things that's really interesting in the sciences at Kenyon is that laboratory classes are sort of often semi-independent from the lecture classes that they're associated with. And in particular, the goals of our introductory laboratory class in biology are not so much to learn material about biology, but to learn how to be a biologist. That is, you learn to do the things that biologists do. So you learn to design experiments, not just run cookbook recipes to get results. You actually learn how to ask a scientific question and address it in a manageable and feasible way using the materials you have available to you. You learn how to analyze data. And so it's a biology class, but it's also really focused on data management, data visualization, and coding in order to make your work accessible to other scientists. And then we also focus really strongly on scientific writing in that class. So It may sound strange, but science is full of writing. We all have to write papers to communicate our science. And we start in our introductory lab class in particular, sort of introducing the scientific paper as a genre of writing. And so just like you would learn to write a haiku, the first 10 haikus that you write might have that syllabic pattern in them, but they're going to be pretty crappy haikus. And the same thing's true of scientific papers. It takes actual practice to learn how to do them. And so we build that practice into the course and have workshops and revision sessions and things like that to actually learn how to communicate about the science that you're doing. And so that's, I think, one of the really exciting first year opportunities in biology, and in biology in particular, is to get into that first laboratory class, work with lots of different organisms, lots of different cutting edge technologies in the lab, but also learn some real skills in communicating about data, communicating about complex scientific concepts, and mastering this very unusual art form known as the scientific paper. So,
thank you, Drew. And I want to move over to Ira. I know you spoke about your first year course at the last question, but we've had a couple of additional questions come in specifically about English and creative writing. So Nicole wants to know, how difficult is it to get into creative writing classes for non-English majors? And Lorian wants to know, what actually does an English major with a creative writing focus look like? So yeah, if you could take both of those on.
Awesome, great. So how difficult is it to get into the creative writing? I think right now we especially in the this year in particular, we have some new faculty members in the English department who are doing some wonderful, engaging thing in creative writing and rethinking what that curriculum it looks like. Right, having it be a much more inclusive curriculum, so that students who are not thinking about being a major can take and will be able to take a creative writing class. The creative writing class that's offered right now that is open to a lot of non-majors is the multi-genre creative writing class, right? And actually, for me as a writer, I write poetry, fiction, nonfiction. It's probably my favorite class because you are going to be exposed to across, you're going to be exposed to some poems, some short stories, some novels, some essays, and what you get out of that class is not just one type of writing. And I think just to kind of talk in a larger sense, I think the creative writing major wants to begin to open up genre lines, not be so centered on one genre. That if you come into Kenyon, I think this is the writing across disciplines, right? If you come to Kenyon, that you're going to leave here with techniques in writing in multiple genres, in multiple ways, in different types of rhetorics, in different types of communications. And so the creative writing curriculum is set up in that way, right? We're moving towards that direction. We're also thinking about looking at creative writing that goes off the page, right? What is creative writing when it's not about the book, right? What does creative writing look like when we do, for example, in my classes, I teach the video essay, right? How does image and text relate to each other? What does text do that language can't, and vice versa, right? And so we're looking to expand these new types of forms in the creative writing, and I think we have some really wonderful faculty members who are doing that. In terms of, I think creative writing, is a very popular genre. So to me, my advice for anyone who's interested in creative writing, immediately contact an advisor or a faculty member in creative writing, and talk about what the steps, the classes you will need to get into the creative writing emphasis in the English major, right? I think your class is coming in a wonderful year, because I think this is a really exciting year where we're really exploring the new possibilities of the word.
No. And another is be generating a lot of interest on the comment line and in chat is a question on sort of what courses would you recommend to an incoming first-year student? And I think this would be fun to hear from multiple folks. Maybe I'll start with Judy and John. So any classes that you recommend to someone thinking about coming to Kenyon?
Judy, you want to go
Well,
first?
I would definitely say mathematics, right? Calculus, right? Well, I think as John said, the arts are really strong here. I mean, taking some classes like what Drew said, in some class that you really don't know anything about that field, but it just sounds intriguing. You never had the opportunity to take something like that. I like to tell my advisees to take a class when you take 4 classes typically. One of them should be a class that you're thinking you're maybe perhaps going to major in. Another one would be a class that you feel pretty comfortable in your confidence, or in you're comfortable that you can do well in this particular course. Just sort of, a bit of a calming effect here. But I like to say, take one that's a bit of a risk, something you're not really sure what it's about, something sounds intriguing. There's room in the schedule for you to do that. And there are lots of interesting classes across campus. And what students realize typically in their sophomore year is, wow, I'm going to have a hard time fitting in everything that I want to take, because there's just so many different interesting classes. I also want to talk a bit about some opportunities that students can get involved in pretty early on that aren't actual courses, but experiential learning opportunities. So, for example, if you're interested in creative writing, you could get involved in the Kenyon Review as a Kenyon Review Associate, and they hire 85 students a year that are involved in a big way in the publishing process. So they're reading submissions, they're evaluating them, and they're part of the editing process. This is an invaluable experience. The Gun Gallery, which is a beacon of art on campus, they hire 45 student interns every year who do curatorial work. They're also doing the day-to-day operations of the gallery, and we work with community outreach. In the math and sciences, students are doing research with faculty, and it's going on throughout the year. And in the summer, it's an immersion experience where students are working for 8 to 10 weeks with the faculty mentor on real problems, some of which become published in research journals. Many are presented at national conferences. And then those research opportunities extend to other disciplines. So there's these sorts of experiences in humanities, in legal studies. There's a couple coming out of the Center for the Study of American Democracy, people interested in poli-sci. And also that same center hires student interns to work on various projects in their center. So there's lots of opportunities to learn, get a hands-on experience. So tap into your interests early and see where it goes, because you don't really know. The class, like for example, calculus in college is very different than calculus in high school. So students will come here thinking, I'm going to just satisfy my QR requirement. But Kenyon, you have one QR course that you have to take, but I think it's an opportunity. So, most students probably take math, but you can take econ, and there's various other courses that you can take. That's a class that you should probably try to get early in your time at Kenyon. And also there's languages that's required. There's a proficiency requirement. And if you haven't satisfied the proficiency, and there's various ways you can do that, I encourage students to do that early. You want to do that in your first couple years. In general, we don't have a huge number of requirements. We have 4 diversification requirements. So they're each year-long requirements. You take 2 courses in 4 different academic divisions. So you take 2 classes in the same department in, say, the natural sciences and mathematics. That's one division. And then 2 classes in the fine arts, dance, and drama, and 2 classes in social sciences, 2 classes in the humanities. So that would be 8 courses during your time at Kenyon.
Thanks,
That's a
Judy.
long answer, but I just want to say.
Thanks, Judy. So John, any recommended courses for incoming student?
Well, I would echo a lot of what Judy said about choices and choosing things that you didn't expect to do. When I came to Kenyon as a student, I was intending to be a chemistry major, and I took a drama class because I always loved the theater and being involved in the theater. And so I took the Introduction to Theater class, which literally changed my life. It's why I'm doing what I do now, because I took that class in my freshman year at Kenyon. And even though I was a chemistry major, my career path was chosen because I decided, why not? It sounds like it would be fun. I'll give it a try. And it really, literally made a difference in what direction I would go. So I would urge you to follow your joy and your passion. And hopefully that's the thing that you may want to major in, but you may discover things that you love that you didn't realize that you would want to follow as a career path, just because you took a chance on a course that you found on a list of classes available for first year students. In my area in particular, the Introduction to Theater class and the Introduction to Film class are great courses for first year students. It's a really great way for you to learn the fundamentals and the vocabulary of what it means to be a theater maker or a filmmaker. It's both theory and also practice. We make stuff as much as we write about stuff and talk about stuff. And I think a lot of our first year courses are like that.
Thank you. Thanks. And so we've had a question come in from one of the viewers, from Danny, who has a question specifically for Ira, but I'd like to actually have everyone answer this. I may answer it as well. Because the question is basically, what is your suggested quarantine reading list? So,
Oh,
and
man.
I maybe actually think of it as things you suggest, or maybe also things that are on your personal quarantine reading list, however you'd like to interpret it. So we'll start with Ira, but we'll go around to have everyone chime in.
All right. What an awesome question. So I'm actually reading a couple books right now. I'm reading John Gardner's Grendel, which is a modern retelling of like Beowulf. It is astounding, right? Grendel is probably one of the most eloquent characters in American literature. So I'm reading that. I'm also, what I've been doing for my classes, I've been reading excerpts of poems by the writers who are coming to, who are doing the virtual reading series at the Kenyon Review right now. So I'm reading the poet Oliver de la Paz and his book, The Boy in the Labyrinth. And I've been reading them to my students. I call it Ira TV. 2 or 3 episodes come out a week. And this book is astounding because it's a book of poetry that is talking about what it means to be a father who is trying to raise 2 autistic sons. And what he does is he's using mythology to try to tell these stories, and it's just phenomenal. It's just wonderful. So if you're interested, Oliver de la Paz will be reading on April 21st, and that we're doing these virtual readings. So if you go to the Kenyon Review reading series site, you will find the link to get into the Zoom and the password to enter the reading. So yeah, those are the 2 books I'm reading right now.
Thanks. Drew, so any quarantine reading recommendations?
So what I'm reading right now is actually a history book, a nonfiction history book called American Canopy, which is it's by a historian named Eric Rutkow, and it's about the role of trees in American history. I'm an ecologist. I like trees. I'm wild about trees. And that also leads to my recommendation. This is one that I've already read, but if you haven't read the novel The Overstory by Richard Powers, check out The Overstory. It's a phenomenal book about trees. I'm a little obsessed. But the trees are actually characters in the book, but it weaves together the lives of a whole set of individuals And the structure of the book itself is a narrative tree that starts with separate roots, comes together into a trunk, and then disperses into a canopy of different stories. And so the book itself kind of has this structure that reflects the topic of the book, and it's just a phenomenal piece of literature. So I'd recommend that if you're up for a novel.
Thanks. So Jackie, quarantine reading.
Yeah. Okay. So my area is human rights and international law and stuff of that genre. A long time ago, or when I was a college student, I read this book by a woman named Samantha Power called "A Problem from Hell," and she basically talks about all the reasons why it's so hard to stop genocide from happening in contemporary world politics. And as some of you might be aware of, she went on to play a very big role recently in the Barack Obama administration in terms of shaping policy on humanitarian issues. And she had a challenging time being a policymaker and kind of dealing with some of the issues she talked about in her earlier book. So I'm actually reading her book, Education of an Idealist, right now to kind of see how she kind of is thinking about her role and as a policymaker versus as a scholar. And I find that very intriguing. And then to make sure I'm being nonpartisan and balanced, I'm also reading Call Sign Chaos by General Mattis. And for my fun reading, because everything gets so serious, I'm actually really into, and this is a very nerdy thing, but I'm amongst friends, nerdy friends at Kenyon, the Veronica Speedwell mystery series. It's just really fun. And anyways, contact me if you want to talk more about any of those books. I'm happy to.
Thanks. John, quarantine reading list.
Well, I'm with Drew. I just did finish the Overstory, so I would definitely recommend that. I'm currently reading The Courage to Teach by Palmer, which is a very good book, but especially for those of us who do that. And I'm rereading and rereading and rereading the play Sweat by Lynn Nottage, which is the play that I'm going to direct in the fall. So that would be my biggest recommendation, is for you all to read Sweat, because you may want to audition when you come here in the very beginning of the semester.
Oh, that is great. And Judy, your recommendation.
Yeah, okay. So first, let me get to like more professional ends. I'm on the editorial board for a conference called Bridges, and this is a conference that brings together mathematicians and computer scientists and people sort of that ilk who have interest in the arts. So there's a conference every year, and it was supposed to be this August in Helsinki, Finland. That's been canceled, of course. But the proceedings are still going to happen. And so I'm reading lots of papers, interesting papers about mathematics and art and the overlap of various forms. So it's not even just visual arts. It's also, some of them involve dance and some of them involve music. I'm also reading, I just finished Educated, which is one of my favorite books ever. It's about a woman who became a professor, a history professor, who grew up in the mountains, raised by a Mormon family, although it's really not about religion. It's just about her culture and how she had to struggle to get to where she was to get an education. And it's an amazing, amazing book. I recommend it for everybody. Okay, this is a really dorky book, and it's on my bedside right now. It's called The Pencil, and it's a book I've had for a long time, but I just managed to find time to start reading it. So it's by Henry Petrosky, and it's just like the history of the pencil and writing implements. And I like the idea of this book because you can do so much with just a pencil, right? So people talk about, being stir crazy. And I have to admit, don't tell anyone, I don't really feel stir crazy, because all I need is a pencil or pen, writing implement, paper, and my computer, and the world of mathematics is vast. Now, I do miss people. I'm glad I have my family around, but I don't miss like restaurants or any of that. All I need, again, is my pencil, paper, and my computer, right? I can go to work. So I don't think I feel it as much as a lot of people do. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. And I will come in. I know I am not a panelist, but I will use sort of moderator / presidential prerogative to chime in. I started rereading, and I do this typically I do this every other year, though given lots of extra reading time this year, I've sped it up and I'm rereading it 2 years in a row. My go-to reread book is Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Like I find those books that I figure out new things. I'm also just blown away by the sort of just beautiful simplicity of the prose that I just really love. So I am rereading for, let me see, so this is now probably my 25th time reading Invisible Man, but I just love it. I also wanted to maybe take just a really short break to do a poll because I heard a dog barking in the background, and I know we have many prospective students who are dog fans, and I know Kenyon is a very dog friendly campus. So I just wanted to do a quick poll of dog owning panelists. So how many folks on the panel? Raise your hand if you have a dog.
That was my dog, Zora, who was barking. Zora, named after Zora Neale Hurston, and she was chasing the deer out of the yard.
Yes. So, yes. So I would say actually maybe as a corollary, does your dog have a literary, scientific, or otherwise academic name? So yes, we've heard Zora Neale Hurston, and I'm cheating a little bit because Judy, I know what's the name of your dog.
My dog's name is Pi, as in the number pi, of course.
And
any other folks?
Actually, very good friends with Rex, who is appropriately named the King. Very
Yeah.
I have a very typical dog named Daisy.
Flowers. I like flowers.
Yes. So circling back, we have another question that's come in from a viewer. This is from Sophia, who has a question about research. So what kinds of research opportunities are out there for Kenyon students, and how hard is it to get involved in research? And so maybe, Drew, I'll start with you on research opportunities for students.
Yeah, so I mean, that's been talked about a little bit. Judy mentioned the sort of wealth of opportunities that we have here, and basically the shorter answer is it's really pretty easy to get involved in research at Kenyon. And by research, I want to make it very clear that I'm not just talking about scientific research. And so we, as Judy mentioned, we do have a summer research program that tends to run somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 students staying on campus each summer to do research with faculty partners. But that activity really extends throughout the year, especially in the sciences. A lot of the different departments have courses where you actually get academic credit for doing research with a faculty mentor. And that credit actually counts towards the major in the science. But there's also lots of sort of research assistant opportunities throughout the year with faculty mentors across all disciplines. And so through things like the Center for the Study of American Democracy and various other sort of institutions, and even just through meetings with the professor and going to their office hours and sort of working together with them, either as part of an independent study or just separately as research, just individually with the mentor. There's a lot of pathways into research, and if any of you out there have more pointed questions about that, look me up on Kenyon's website. I'm the only person named Kirchhoff on the faculty, and just send me an email, and I'm happy to point you towards some of the resources that are available online, so you can look into what's available out there.
Thanks. And I know I mentioned, so I'm jumping in between serious and not so serious questions. I mentioned dogs a bit earlier, but I know there's also been some comments on the chat of people asking about Moxie the cat. So yes, this is a dog-friendly campus. We are also clearly a very cat-friendly campus. Just very briefly, if anyone has a Moxie story that they would share.
Well, I will, because I live next door to Moxie.
Oh, yeah.
So my house is right next to the house where Moxie lives. And when Moxie was younger, Moxie used to sit on our front porch and try to get inside. But Moxie learned not too quickly, or not, it didn't take her too long to learn that the Kenyon students were a lot more fun. So now she's off on campus and she's not trying to get in our house anymore.
Yes, when you come to Kenyon, you will encounter Moxie very soon. I think it is hard not to encounter Moxie if one is walking around on campus. Now, so we've also had a few questions from students who are interested in business. So we've heard about opportunities for students in research, and we've heard about opportunities for students in writing and the arts. As I wonder if anyone wants to talk about the in particular, internships in a broad range of areas, and kind of how the Kenyon network of alumni helps with the internships. And maybe starting with Judy, and then if Jackie, if you would be interested in chiming in on this as well. Judy.
Sure. Yeah, you know, a lot of students interested in business major in economics or mathematics, or a combination. Sometimes they major and minor in one or the other. There are a lot of internships that students get involved in, and a lot of them do work through the CDO, which is the Center, what is it? The Center, Career Development Office, right? Career Development Office. They're really helpful. They help people write their resumes and so on, but also connect them with alumni. And not just alumni, also parents. So parents of Kenyon students turn out to be really, really resourceful. So for example, this past year I was chair and I organized a speaker series on, we always have a speaker series on Mondays, but I decided to make it more geared towards highlighting internship experiences so students can learn more about what sort of opportunities are out there. And I was also trying to save money for the college because we don't have, unlimited funds to bring in speakers from all over. So I asked for volunteers of students who had done interesting internships if they would give maybe talk for 10, 15 minutes on it, or if they wanted more time. Well, the response I got was so big that it filled up half of the semester. And students had done internships. They had worked for professional baseball teams. One worked for the Rockets. So that would be basketball, though, right? So there was a basketball, there was baseball. Students worked on Wall Street. Students doing accounting internships. One of the parents who I was talking about earlier, she works for Nationwide in Columbus. She set up a pipeline. She came and gave a talk and encouraged students to apply for internships down there. We worked together with Ohio State also to set up some internships where students work in the summer with some of the faculty even at Ohio State. So sometimes the students will work in research at Kenyon for a semester, and then a following semester they'll do an internship or a research elsewhere. We had a student recently who went to the Library of Congress, and when the students come back and give talks about their experience, they're then advising other students how they can then land a similar position. So it's very common. A huge number of our majors do it, and then a lot of times these internships lead to jobs. So they're hired as interns for some of these positions. They're thinking, okay, we hire the interns, and it's going to become your job when you graduate.
Great. And Jackie, I don't know if you have political science majors or others that you've worked with.
So political science for business people is another major they might consider. And I know the students specifically interested in business and kind of going that direction post Kenyon, there are a lot of really interesting community engaged learning projects that can tap you into local businesses, and you can get a lot of experience that way. I'm also one of the faculty that works with the Summer Legal Scholars Program, and a lot of students end up interning with local businesses and really learning the ropes that way. And then in the past, I know a lot of firms come to Kenyon and recruit and get a lot of students to come work for them, the summer between their junior and senior year, and a lot of those turn into jobs. And one of the coolest business jobs I recently heard about was one of my students actually ended up working for LL Bean in Maine and just had an absolutely incredible experience. And they're actually recruiting her and a lot of people that work for that firm to go work there over the summer. So I think there's a lot of really wonderful opportunities for students interested in business internships to get really hands-on practical experience at Kenyon and then connect with alumni and different opportunities at Kenyon to really kind of explore those opportunities beyond.
So, thank you all thanks to all of our panelists. This has been a really wonderful conversation. And I wish we had a chance to get to all of the questions today, but thank you for those who participated. Please actually keep the conversation going online. If you're interested in connecting with more panels, there will be more over the course of the month. If you'd like to connect with a particular student or professor, you can email congrats@kenyon.edu. And we can connect you with a faculty member or a student to talk more about the Kenyon experience. And in the meantime, good luck with your decision-making process. We hope to find other ways to keep bringing Kenyon to you over the course of the next few days and weeks. And in the meantime, hope to see you on Middle Path next year. Thank you very much, and thanks to the panelists. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.